In some new released text messages, thanks to the ongoing NASCAR lawsuit, NASCAR Commissioner Steve Phelps said that Richard Childress is a stupid redneck who needed to be flogged. NASCAR brass was concerned about the SRX series and called it a trash series. The Race Team Alliance explored having races in Oman, Churchill Downs, Mexico, and Nashville, and Michael Jordan's team seems to think that charters could be worth $200 million thanks to their influence. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. Strap in, ladies and gentlemen, because we're getting right into it. Earlier this year, we got some release of text messages and emails that certainly didn't make anybody look super great, right? You had the Steve Phelps F the Teams one, which really wasn't an F the Teams one. We had the Steve Luetta from 2311 Racing saying the best way forward is if Jim France dies. Well, now, thanks to some new text messages that came out on Friday, thanks to Bob Hawkers, Matt Weaver, Kelly Crandall, and others for posting the screenshots of them. Yeah, NASCAR wasn't super happy with Richard Childress during their charter negotiations, which included NASCAR now Commissioner Steve Phelps calling Richard Childress a stupid redneck and said that he needed to be taken out back and flogged. Yeah, not ideal here. You can see the text messages here. Let's go through them real quick. We'll get started with Brian Herbst here. Now, these are from August of 2023. Brian Herbst from NASCAR says, I do think at some point it'd be helpful for me to get in a big room with these owners and presidents to talk about the state of media, business fragility of the pay TV model, and how we all need to come together in order to stand a chance in 2030 and 2031. That is when the next NASCAR media rights deal is up, and they'll have to negotiate a new one there. And NASCAR is concerned about the model of TV going forward. I know a lot of people are like, does this mean that NASCAR is scared they're going to go away? No, it means that NASCAR is worried they're not going to get the same amount of money that they just got on this new TV media rights deal that started this year in 2025. Brian goes on to say, otherwise, it doesn't matter what the percentages are. Obviously, the teams want a bigger percentage. And what he's saying here is like, yeah, you guys can get 40% or 50% of whatever you want out of this. But if we don't get as much money in 2030, 2031 on the next TV rights deal, then this is kind of all for naught here. Phelps responded with, I agree with you. Did you give them some sense of how bad things are out there in regards to the TV market? And he says, Childress needs to be taken out back and flogged. He's a stupid redneck who owes his entire fortune to NASCAR. That's the headline. That's the headline everybody's going to be running with there. That is certainly one that grabs everybody's attention here. And I understand what Phelps is saying. I genuinely understand it here. Does it look bad? Absolutely. It looks just as bad as the Steve Luetta text that says that the best way forward is Jim France dying. I understand the context behind that. I understand what he was saying. Basically saying that Jim France is the wall that's standing in the way of them proceeding. I understand it. That is kind of what Steve Phelps is saying here, that Childress just does not understand the TV market and the ongoing changes in the media landscape. That's what he's saying. He calls him a stupid redneck. Probably shouldn't have said that, who owes his entire fortune to NASCAR, which isn't entirely wrong there, right? Like Richard Childress got his start in NASCAR and he's grown his company into a he's worth a couple $100 million because of NASCAR. And great for him. He played it well. He's the one that has stayed in business this long. Sure, he had two generational talents that got him to where he's at now, but he certainly made something out of what wasn't there previously. So, is he a stupid redneck? You can make the argument that he certainly says dumb things at times, in my opinion. But the guy has certainly built a business around NASCAR and branched out from NASCAR as well. So I can't fault him there by any means. Brian goes on to say, I didn't go there, kept it high level for now. Ongoing conversations, figuring out where all the puzzle pieces land, etc. But happy to do so in future conversations. Just didn't know if now was the time to provide a dose of reality or not. Phelps says, 10-4, how's it going thus far? They get into a little bit more here. I'm not going to read through all the text messages because, I don't know, this isn't an interactive reading session here. You all can read. Basically, told him that we would do a good media deal this time around, but they were terrified about the next one. That is what Steve Phelps is saying, particularly if all the teams don't come together. And he said he spoke with Justin Marks about it as well. I spoke to the existing media market, how challenging it is, but confident that they could end up in a good place. And they did end up in a good place with the amount of money they got. I know fans aren't happy with the amount of races on cable, but NASCAR is looking to maximize money. That's what they did here. That's what the teams wanted, was more money, right? So then they talk about how the meeting concluded, everything like that. Yeah, kind of a back and forth. And then Phelps once again doubles down and says, did I mention that Childress is an idiot? And Brian Herbst laughed at it in his, the emoji that you can laugh at the text rather than just listen to the hit. He is an idiot. So many false claims or disingenuous statements here. If he's that, and Phelps says if he's that angry, and apparently he is, sign your charter extension and sell. He's not smart, is a dinosaur, and is malcontent. He's worth a couple $100 million, every dollar associated with NASCAR in some fashion. Total ass clown. So again, Phelps is super upset with what Richard Childress is saying there. And again, in terms of business, text messages back and forth, these are not that bad. These are pretty tame in the grand scheme of things. Like, if you don't think people talk about other people this way, then you're just naive. I don't know what to tell you there. Yeah, I definitely have said things similar to that in text messages as well when we're doing things in like my professional life. But yeah, like, this isn't anything crazy by any means. It coming out in public, yeah, it doesn't look great. Like, you certainly don't want it to be public by any means, but that's what happened here. Herb says agreed, and Tori brought up the cost of the underwing today for what it's worth. Probst handled it well in good style, but I guess it's an RCR talking point now. So again, the underside of the car being expensive, like $20,000, $40,000, somewhere in that range. I can't remember the exact number, but it's expensive. Getting more into here, sounds that way, no different than the bike car. They all spent millions chasing speed under the car. He's an idiot. Talking about the previous generation car there, where everybody was focused on the underneath of the car to create speed. Herb said Foxhall called today, very likely that they're coming back at 16 NASCAR Cup Series races. Then we have Phelps saying at 410 or still at 400, meaning $410 million or $400 million. Feels like we'll settle at 15 at 415 million or so. Thoughts? Herb says it's in the same place. No indication on dollars yet. Guess we're getting a turn on. Said they're going to have to fire up the jets and head out to Los Angeles to talk to the Fox people. And then had a couple more talking about Michael Jordan. Nothing crazy there. So the big takeaway from the RCR ones is the fact that, yeah, he got called a total ass clown, got called a stupid redneck, said they need to be flogged, and that's certainly going to be the talking point of everybody going forward. And I understand that. But there were more text messages that came out as well. On the topic of the SRX series, a superstar racing experience that Tony Stewart put together that ran on CBS for the first 2 years and then moved over to ESPN. Remember that midsummer series, ran on Saturday night, then ran midweek with ESPN. Certainly garnered a lot of attention, but was never a real competitor to NASCAR. At least I didn't think it was ever a real competitor. It only ran for 6 weeks in the middle of the summer, and it attracted some drivers, but it certainly wasn't anything that was ever going to compete with NASCAR on a grand scale. It was more of a nice little fun exhibition thing. And in my opinion, felt more like WWE because it felt like some of the races, yeah, maybe had a certain narrative that were set out for them, and certainly leaders at times would maybe fade back to create for a more entertaining race. Everybody that says that WWE is NASCAR, I would argue maybe it was more SRX in my opinion, but we have some text messages here from 2023, and now these are messages with Ben Kennedy, Steve O'Donnell, Steve Phelps, and an unnamed person. The unnamed person says, oh great, another owner racing in SRX. That other owner was Denny Hamlin, who signed up to do some SRX races. O'Donnell said, this is NASCAR, pure and simple, enough. We need legal to take a shot at this. Basically saying they need to have NASCAR legal see if they can bar Cup drivers from racing in the SRX series. They didn't want their stars going over and helping grow another series that wasn't associated with NASCAR. And I can understand the thought process behind that, right? Like, the NFL certainly doesn't want Patrick Mahomes to go play in another competing football league somewhere. The NBA doesn't want LeBron James to go compete in an upstart series anywhere. Like, that's just is what it is. The PGA doesn't want their stars playing in Live. Live didn't want their stars playing in PGA. Like, it's a back and forth here. They didn't want it. Steve Phelps says these guys are playing in stupid, need to put a knife in this trash series. That trash series being the SRX series. And again, I contend, I don't think that this was ever a real threat to NASCAR. SRX was what it was. It's supposed to be sort of this spec racing series that, you know, was IROC reincarnated, that went to some grassroots tracks around the country. And honestly, that was the best part of SRX, the fact that they went to these grassroots racetracks, put them on national television, and have big name drivers go there. Something that NASCAR should absolutely consider doing, but it was never a threat to NASCAR. It's like the NFL being concerned about the Arena Football League. No, that's just never, ever going to be, you know, something they should have to worry about. So yeah, I didn't really understand this. It's like the NBA not concerned about the big three or anything like that. Okay, yeah, you guys can do it, but I don't think that this is ever going to be a threat to us, but they were not happy about it. In some text messages from 2022, we have Steve O'Donnell talking to Ben Kennedy as well as Steve Phelps in this as well. And O'Donnell says, Justin Marks is racing in SRX because Justin Marks did make some starts in SRX, or a start in SRX. And Ben Kennedy said, saw that too, disappointing. So they weren't happy to see a NASCAR team owner go race in SRX because, again, it's not associated with NASCAR. Then we have the unnamed text message in this, or the unnamed person's text message said, they just don't get it. I'm sure it's cool for Justin to get behind the wheel, but there's no regard for the bigger picture. And maybe that's on us for not giving them that incentive. I don't know. But you've got Marks, Chase, Tony, and Blaney racing on a network that competes against our rights holders. They outrated Xfinity and Trucks last weekend. It isn't some local dirt track stuff. So that last part there, outrated the Truck Series. That just shows how poorly Fox handles the Truck Series. CW does a really good job with the Xfinity Series now. But also you have to remember that this was on network television as well, on CBS at this point, and that it was being shown up against nothing in the middle of the summer. And again, it's on network as well. So like you expect that number to be bigger than a race on FS1 as well. And again, I wouldn't be that concerned about it if I were them. The just not getting it part, the racing on other networks. Again, I understand NASCAR wanting to protect their rights holders and be like, hey, you know, Fox, NBC thought that they were getting the stars of the Cup Series. Like those were theirs. And now they've got them over here on CBS, helping grow another series as well. Yeah, it makes for some, you know, awkward phone calls. And then you've got O'Donnell saying, actually, you have one of the voices of Fox and Waltrip, an owner of multiple cars in Stewart, one of our most popular drivers for years, and one of our champs' fathers, etc. This is Exhibit A that nobody gives a shit about what got them their careers. Pay them some money and they're all in. The guy who cried about safety every single day is in a boxcar without safer barriers and not a care in the world. And by the way, who does Curtis have hanging with MJ over the weekend in Nashville? Not Ben, me, or Prime, or anyone. Marty Smith from ESPN. Coincidence? Let's get our arms around. But sadly, any goodwill seems to be lost. So smiles all around, but behind the scenes, we scheme and we win. So O'Donnell, through all of this, O'Donnell is a company guy. He wants NASCAR to succeed first and foremost here. So a couple of things. One, you're talking about the drivers in the situation, complaining about the safety of the cars and going racing in a boxcar with non-safer barriers. Keep in mind, this is at the same time where the Gen 7 car basically ended Kurt Busch's career by giving him that concussion. So it's tough to argue the safety aspect there. Now, having said that, I will say NASCAR has made the Gen 7 car incredibly safer, and they jumped on it immediately and made a lot of changes. So commend them for that. Like, fantastic job. Happy that they fixed it. But at the time here, like, yeah, we went through a pretty tough spot with drivers getting some head injuries there. Then the Michael Jordan thing. Yeah, I think it really was just a coincidence that Marty Smith was hanging out with MJ in Nashville. I don't think that there was an SRX play or ESPN play to try to get them going over there or anything like that. Like, that just kind of is what it was essentially. So yeah, that was a non-starter for me. But Steve O'Donnell wants to make sure that NASCAR is always first, hence the last line of it there. Then he says, wait till Junior says he's running an event. Matter of time. They will go to North Wilkesboro with SM Speedway Motorsports and Junior. If we are not careful, we need to be the first back. First back to North Wilkesboro is what he's talking about there. This unnamed person says, agree, North Wilkesboro and Bowman Gray next year with Junior and friends if we don't make moves. So they were concerned about SRX bringing in Dale Jr., getting that huge boost, not only from ticket sales, but from merch, from eyes, from ratings as well. Like, they didn't want to see that happen. I don't think it was ever going to happen. Dale kind of talked about how he had no interest in doing those races. Like, they weren't able to get a Jeff Gordon or a Tony Stewart or anybody like that, or not Tony Stewart, a Jeff Gordon or a Dale Earnhardt Jr., to come over. They got Stewart, of course, because he started the damn series. But yeah, no, I don't think that this was as big of a threat as they maybe thought it was going to be. Then O'Donnell says, how about an all-star race? Make it a combo, Bowman Gray and North Wilkesboro Friday, Sunday. Yeah, hell yeah. Give us that. That's the best thing that I've seen come out of these text messages so far. That should be how the all-star race is set up. Obviously now it's the Clash and the all-star race. Well, it was the all-star race, but now we go to Dover, and I don't think anybody wants to go to Dover for the all-star race. And then this unnamed person said sick and flip it for 2024. We got to make moves, basically everything that they said there. Then Phelps here at the bottom said, that's the key. We need to have everyone understand that this could turn into live if we don't play our cards right. We are smarter than they are, but part of the issue is they don't have the facts and don't seem to want to take the time to learn, or maybe they just don't care. It's all about the money and feeling like they have been heard and respected. The SRX thing is baffling to me. Why don't they get it? Oh, they do get it, and it's a huge FU to us. So again, they're very concerned about this. Turning into live, which has been a kind of a common theme throughout this. But again, I don't think SRX is really ever going to be a threat to them in the way that they potentially thought it was going to be. So then that brings us to the Race Team Alliance, which is the RTA, which is the teams that got together and they basically formed this alliance, lack of a better term there, that they would negotiate together and then they would try to do things together, like the Racing America website, streaming some short track events, stuff like that, and then negotiate with NASCAR through this. Well, there was also some talk a couple years ago about the Race Team Alliance holding races outside of the NASCAR season, not using NASCAR cars, but basically being able to use their drivers as well. Create these like one-off exhibition races, big purses, something along those lines. Well, we had heard about them, but we never heard about any other plans. Turns out there were a lot of plans, actually. They had plans to potentially race in Oman, which I feel like if you ask the average American to find Oman on a map, they're not going to be able to do it. It's right next to Yemen, and Dubai is up to the north of it there, UAE. So yeah, it's over in the Middle East. But they were potentially going to have a street race in Muscat, which is the capital, or in one of the stadiums there. Think of the Coliseum, the Clash of the Coliseum. Basically recreate that. Maybe using TA2 cars from the Trans Am series or another custom design car. Think of SRX and how they had a sort of a custom design car as well. And then have a race over there with the Omanis in Oman to have a race. Again, I don't think it would have been a great thing because I don't think it does much to grow the sport here. And I don't think anybody in this country would really care about that. I mean, like, sure, I'd tune in to watch, but it's certainly not going to be like this big thing that I think people would maybe be that interested in. Well, they also explored having races in Nashville. I assume maybe at the Nashville Fairgrounds or maybe even a street race there. Justin Marks was on top of that one. They explored having races in Mexico, and they explored having a race at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, which of course is a dirt track. And honestly, after having seen ARCA run like a mile dirt track at Springfield and DuQuoin, I don't really need to see anybody else do it because it's not that entertaining in the grand scheme of things. But they really went through it. And as you can see here, they had the cars, the options that they had, the race format for the oval, qualifying race, 4 rounds, 50 laps or 20 minutes, whichever comes first, a point system, 15 cars, 3 different teams that would come out of it, arrive on Monday, and then have your races on Saturday and Sunday, even laid out what stadium they could potentially use to build a track in. Also, I love the comparison here that you can see of Muscat along with Monaco and be like, yeah, these are the same places. They are not the same places. The south of France is very different than Oman here on the water. But yeah, regardless, there's a lot of thought that went into this. Pretty interesting. If people want to click through it, you can definitely, pause the video and check it out as well. Then we had some other next step things here. It says in the next 2 weeks, Justin was speaking with Oman, communicating that this is likely a $25 to $30 million undertaking and seeing if they remain interested at that number. Nashville, flesh this out, see what it might look like with the event group going forward. And then Wasserman, which does like the stage setup and stuff for NASCAR, is going to look at Mexico and then potentially have a conversation with Churchill Downs, which would have been a 2024 event. And I guess it would have been cool, but I don't know if anybody really needs to see that. But regardless, they put a lot of thought into it as well. And then we have a text message or a text thread here, a message thread from 2021. It had Jerry Freese and Jeremy Lang on it, and they're talking about Michael Jordan's team coming into NASCAR here. And Lang says, you guys get the deal done. Freese says, no, that is why no mention of a charter. Too many parties involved to define too many hypotheticals. Lang says, I can only imagine. What a cluster. Still, I find it hard to believe that Bob will be partners with Denny and MJ. Such different people. Bob being Bob Jenkins, the owner of FRM. And Freese says, yeah, tell me about it. Here he says, you and I think are real about it. Ain't no way it works. And then Freese says, MJ's people are a whole different level. They really think the charters will be worth $200 million once they use their influence on the next NASCAR TV deal. I want them to tell them the Hornets are riding the coattails of LeBron, Steph Curry, and the NBA's world marketing plan, not the stewardship of a low-level franchise. They keep saying how they are going to increase our charter's value once they run it and make Bob more money. But hell, they aren't outrunning us now. So then Lang says, haha, my thoughts exactly. They truly don't get it. It's easy now why they have sponsorship. Without it, they are no different than Rick Ware. So basically the Jerry Freese, who runs Front Row Motorsports along with Bob Jenkins, is basically saying that he doesn't really think that 2311 Racing, Michael Jordan and his ownership group have that much influence. Like the reason that their value was worth so much, the Hornets in Charlotte when they owned it, is because of the NBA, not because of Charlotte or Michael Jordan or anything like that, but because of the marketing plan of the NBA, because of the media rights deal, and because of everything else that went into it. The other star players in the league, not the Charlotte Hornets. And he's not wrong there. So Freese skeptical of Michael Jordan and his team coming in and thinking that they can increase the charters, which has kind of been a common thought behind this for a little bit now. We keep hearing about how MJ's team thinks that it's worth so much more and how they think the TV deal can be done, blah, 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 blah. And we've yet to see that produced in a sense, but hey, I guess that's why we're in this lawsuit. So A lot to dig through there, but let me know what you think about the comments about Richard Childress, the SRX comments. Do you think they're an actual threat? RTA wanting to race in various different places, including Oman, and then the Jerry Freeze conversation here at the end. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.